Hi everyone, this is Heather from weddingsbyheather.com. Hey, if you need help with your workflow, make sure you check out my free video series on my website. This week's Q&A is about swapping heads in photographs. This is a common practice in portrait photography and even sometimes wedding photography. But after years of doing this, what you'll start to learn is that it's really much easier to just get it right in camera. So take several photos of the pose that you like so that you make sure everyone is looking and smiling. But occasionally it's just something you have to do. So a friend of mine sent me these photos today, and she asked me to put the mom's head from this photo on to the landscape photo. I would consider this a maybe moderate level of difficulty. It's certainly not the easiest, but it's not the most difficult I've ever done either. And maybe when I get a chance, I'll record some videos demonstrating those techniques. The first thing I'm going to do is I want to take her head from this photo. I'm going to do so using the Marquee Tool. That's M on my keyboard. I'm just going to click and drag a semi-rough selection. I like to right-click inside of that selection and layer via copy. I press V on my keyboard in order to access my Move tool. And then I simply click and drag her head from this photo over onto this canvas. So there we go. There's her head. I can go ahead and close this image. I won't be needing it any further. That's Command or Control W. And if you're on the Mac, you can just press D for don't save. And on the PC, you would press N for no. Let's go ahead and make this photo bigger. I'm going to press F on my keyboard in order to get it into full screen, and then Command or Control plus to zoom in, Spacebar to access my pan tool, and here we go. Okay, obviously the photo on the left is larger, so we're going to have to scale it down. Before I do that, I do want to mention that this is actually the second step in this process. Prior to starting this video, I had these photos in Lightroom and I color corrected them as closely as possible as I could. One had a little more haze from sun flare than the other, but I did the best I could to sort of get them looking the same in terms of color and tonality so they would match. Okay, I'm going to pull her head right about here, and obviously I cannot see behind her. So what I like to do is drop the opacity of layer 1 by clicking and dragging on the word opacity to get my scrubby slider and just pulling that down until I can see her head through there. What I like to do is line up the eyes. I'm going to look at the eyes and the teeth. So here's this photo. I'm going to line up her right eye. I'm going to press Command T, that's Control T on the PC, in order to access my free transform tool. I'm going to hold down Shift on my keyboard in order to constrain the proportions so you don't warp her head. And I'm going to choose any of the corner handles would be fine. And I'm going to bring it down. Obviously, it's going to move it. I'm going to put my mouse inside and reposition. So again, I'm trying to line up her eyes and her mouth a little bit. And I'm going to hold down Shift and bring this in. Okay, so there are a few things happening. One is I notice it's not the same perspective, and it's going to need to be rotated a little bit. Let me do a Command or Control plus to zoom in one more time. And the reason I say that is because I see that these eyes and her mouth aren't lining up appropriately. So I'm going to place my cursor on the outer edge of my free transform box, and I'm going to kind of start to rotate it. I'm looking at her eyes. Are her eyes lining up? And that's looking much better. I'm also checking out her eyebrows, eyebrows, eyes, all of these things, watching that they need to line up. I can see right here that this eyebrow is still beneath the other one. So all I need to do is click and drag up until those line up. This will require some finesse, making sure that everything looks good. Okay, her teeth and her mouth look lined up pretty well. Let me move this over a little bit. I'm just kind of trying to find the sweet spot. And by the way, as I mentioned earlier, I would consider this a moderate head swap because there's sometimes where we need to go into the edit menu and use the skew or distort or warp tools in order to really alter the perspective. When you like the way this is looking, all you need to do is press Enter or Return on your keyboard in order to commit the change. And then what I'm going to do is bring this layer back up to 100% opacity. I'm going to zoom out with a Command or Control minus. I'm going to add a layer mask to layer 1 by clicking on the layer mask icon at the bottom of the layers palette. I'm going to press B on my keyboard in order to choose my brush tool. I'm going to make sure that I'm painting with a black brush on a white mask. Remember, when it comes to layer masking, white reveals, black conceals. I wish to make my brush a little bit larger. I'm going to press the right bracket key on my keyboard, and then what I'm going to start to do is just mask out the portion of this swap that I don't wish to show up in this photo. I'm going to make my brush a little bit smaller, my left bracket key, so that I can come in a little bit closer, and I'm using my black brush to mask out the outer edge, and I'm watching the edges and her hair and obviously her husband's face and ear, and I'm gonna turn that layer off and then on. Now that looks pretty good, but I'm seeing a few things. Her head kind of turned. You can see how that happened. I'm going to press V on my keyboard to just nudge that layer over a little bit. V on my keyboard, nudge that layer. There we go. And move her face up a little bit. And let me look at the before and after. Okay, there is something that's really going to bother me. I noticed that there's a little more green in this image than there is in the other one. The other one has a little more magenta. And I can see that specifically in the shadows of her hair. So maybe I could have corrected that a little bit better in Lightroom, but I didn't notice it. So that's okay in this case. Oh, there's also something else I'm noticing that I don't like. If you look at the before, you'll see how she's smiling and the way her chin looks. Now look at the after. She sort of has this double chin from the way she was holding her head, and no woman wants to see that. So do us all a favor and get rid of it. So here's the thing. I like her smile and her chin in this photo, but obviously I need her eyes open. I have problems with this hair. Okay, so I'm going to make the decision for this particular case, and every photo is going to be different. I'm going to just open her eyes. And what I mean by that is I'm going to mask out everything else. Now, if this happens, if you paint with a black brush and you think you're masking, but you get black on your photo, it's because you are on the layer icon and not the mask. Whoops, I'm going to do Command-Alt-Z to undo that. I'm going to click this mask and I'm going to brush over here, and I'm going to bring back her whole face with the exception, and her hair, everything, with the exception of her eyes. And let's do a before and after. Before and after. It's like, hi, how are you? Hey, don't blink, open your eyes. Please keep your eyes open. And if you wish to nudge those eyes a little further, you can click on the layer, press V on your keyboard, and then maybe move your arrow keys. When you click with your arrow keys, you're nudging by 1 pixel at a time, rather than trying to click and drag with your mouse, which will never be as precise. I like to use those arrow keys. And by the way, if you wish to nudge 10 pixels at a time, all you need to do is hold down Shift. I hope that you found this useful. The last thing I'm going to do is zoom out and just do one last before and after, and I think that looks great. I would save this out as a JPEG and deliver it to the client. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video.